Hello, my name is Austin Stam, and this is Lead 33 TV, which emphasizes learning, education, aging, and disability. This is the Difference uh, podcast episode where I focus on different issues and topics related to higher education and disability. Today, I wanted to cover a recent article that talked about how the autism rate is increasing. They're saying now it's 1 in 40 children are diagnosed with on the autism spectrum. Uh, this is from a 2016 National Survey of Children's Health. Although it could be 1 in 59, as that's what previously the CDC study found. And they also say that 64%, this is from their study, parents reported that children receive behavioral therapy, and 27% reported that their child takes medication. So a lot of students are, a lot of children on the autism spectrum do receive some type of therapy, and about 25% of them are taking medication. So I think those are important things to keep in mind for higher education, because there's going to be, and there is right now, an increase of students on the autism spectrum, and it's important for higher education institutions to be prepared and to be providing the supports needed to help those students. Some of the things that can be really beneficial for students on the autism spectrum is like a peer mentoring program, where students either on the spectrum or neurotypical students work with students on the spectrum and kind of mentor them through either their like first year or throughout their year, providing different social opportunities and things like that. There's also some colleges have life skills programs. Life skills programs will work with the students on things like doing laundry, having a set study schedule, because a lot of it can be hard sometimes for students on the autism spectrum to have be organized and kind of with their executive functioning, make the right choices to study and things like that. So kind of working with someone where there's a set regimen and routine can be really helpful for students on the autism spectrum. So they're like, we're going to study in the library every day at 3 p.m. That kind of provides that structure. Another thing that's helpful is academic coaching. This can be kind of a one-on-one meeting, generally with a coach or representative from the disability office on campus, and the students will, kind of review all their courses and classes and kind of get an understanding of what needs to be done each day, what they should be focusing on, and it really kind of helps put in perspective for the student what they need to be working on, and also tying in the larger goal of like what's their major and what are they trying to do after college as well. It can be really good because the academic coach could also connect maybe to different things like the Department of Rehab or supported employment programs with the career office in the future as the student approaches graduation. Looking at like social events, social events can also be put on by like disability services, or if there's club on campus, maybe specifically for students on the autism spectrum or related to disability, they might have events. In general, I would say through the peer mentor program, they generally try and foster, joining clubs too, because that's a good way for students to get connected, as well as religious institutions too, because they generally have consistent events that students can attend. Classroom accommodations. So there's like common accommodations, might be like breaks or different sensory strategies. I wanted to put a couple up, as I know people might not be as familiar. So like if you have a cushion seat, like this has air inside of it, it can kind of keep you more alert. So providing that sensory input, a little bit of vestibular input from the movement, and you could also get some fidget toys like silly putty and stuff like that. You can also, when you take a break, maybe getting something to eat, doing some push-ups, getting some proprioceptive input can be helpful. So those are some things I wanted to kind of go over. Now, changing course to a different subject, there's a new microphone slash transcription service being released called SpeakSee. Their product will be out in June of 2019. What's really interesting about SpeakSee is that, as you can see here, they have their own custom microphones that are noise canceling that the speaker would clip on. And then the person who has a hearing impairment would be able to use like their iPhone or smartphone and get to see what's being said. I think they have apps for both Android and iOS. And it costs about $400 plus $10 a month transcription for a couple hours of transcription. I think they don't really have their exact transcription plan set up yet too much. But as I mentioned, it cuts the background noise from the mic. And, it's a really interesting idea because then you could use something like this, just going back to this picture, you could just clip this on. These are each a microphone, so you just clip one on, but like you could have someone speaking basically at like a party or in like a dorm room or whatever the event is and get transcription for people, which I think is really great for hard of hearing students. It's similar to, I just realized, so this is a blunder on my part. I did not enable the live captioning. I think it is enabled now. I apologize that there was no live captioning for the beginning of this video. I forgot to click that button. So as I was saying, I use live transcription through or captioning through Google Slides, but also through PowerPoint. So I just kind of wanted to, I think SpeakSee will be another option basically that can be used, but it's more portable than these options. It's really require a computer. SpeakSee you can use from your smartphone, so it's really anywhere. Job growth for people with disabilities. There was an article talking about, and by the way, all these articles are linked. If you click on more info, you can see the articles. So there's an article focusing on job growth for people with disabilities has increased from 30% November 2017 to 30.7% for November 2018. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a very modest gain, but I think that it is good that it is growing. I wanted to also show these two quick slides about other stats that highlight some of the challenges for students with disabilities transitioning into employment and how it can be difficult to get a job. So you see on the left here is people with disabilities, and you can see that even with a bachelor degree, the amount of people employed, this is what it's showing, the bigger the bar, the more people are employed, is very small. Now, if you look at people with no disabilities, most people with a bachelor's degree, oh, I apologize. This first graph is actually showing people with disabilities and their ability to actually get to achieving a bachelor's degree or higher education. As you can see, this top bar on the left is very small because it's very difficult for students with disabilities to make it up to getting a bachelor's degree or higher education degree. While if you see with people with no disabilities, the bar is much bigger because a lot more people without disabilities are getting bachelor's degrees, which is why it's important for our higher education institutions to become more accessible. So here's the next chart I was kind of talking about when looking at employment for people with disabilities. This light blue bar is without a disability, and as you can see, it's bigger pretty much for everything compared to with a disability, meaning that if you have a disability, you're much less likely to be able to get a job. And that's another thing where, although we have the ADA and these different laws to support people with disabilities, we really need to work on making sure that the work environments are accessible, and encouraging companies to hire people with disabilities for their workforce. And again, just putting that last statistic, that first statistic I was talking about the 30% in perspective, generally our workforce is at least at 60% employed. That's people, let's say with no disabilities versus 30% with people with disabilities, just kind of highlighting how it's almost double and how we really need to be working on trying to get more people with disabilities employed and in our workforce. So some of the services that are available in higher education is there are every college has generally a career center or career department that students with disabilities can talk to and get help and guidance as far as resume help and things like that, and interview prep. Another thing is colleges and universities need to provide supports, need to really use other services too, like Department of Rehab and support employment agencies, which can help students. Department of Rehab actually can help students with disabilities get scholarships for school, and also provide job training, which is really nice. And support employment agencies generally can look at the skills of that student and see what jobs would best fit, to the student's major and interests. So I think those are some more things that's important for higher education to be kind of linked up with and know, so that they can support their students as they progress through graduation and beyond into the workforce. So now I'm going to go to the issue of the day. The issue of the day is about STEM participation in students with autism. The title of the journal article is High School Math and Science Preparation and Post-Secondary STEM Participation for Students with an Autism Spectrum Disorder. Importance of STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics jobs are in demand. They are growing. I think they're expected to grow over 20% in these next 10 years. They're really in demand compared to, I think on average is like 5%. So they're growing a lot faster than most other jobs. And students on the autism spectrum are more likely to have an interest in those subjects. So it's important for higher education institutions to really support students on the spectrum, because they do have an interest coming in, and we want to make sure that they're able to go through these programs and achieve their goals of becoming employed in STEM jobs. So they looked at 11,000 students, and approximately 1,100 students were selected who were on the autism spectrum. They were between 13 and 16. A high proportion of STEM majors took advanced mathematics. So they looked at from when they were like 13 or 16 to graduating high school, and what they ended up going to college majoring in STEM. And 42% of STEM majors with ASD took advanced mathematics, compared to 22% of non-STEM majors. So really, it's important in primary school, going through high school. You want to, if the student's interested in STEM and the student on the spectrum wants to take higher math, they should have the supports in place to make sure that they're able to do that, because that can be something that will help lead them to a STEM major in the future. And early exposure to advanced math really helps encourage ASD students to consider STEM. I bet early exposure to advanced math helps everybody pretty much choose STEM. If you expose to advanced math early, you're more likely to be a STEM major, I would imagine. Conversation ability. So this was another interesting find from the study, was that students who are more comfortable being social are more likely to be STEM majors. I think that's interesting, as generally STEM majors are kind of viewed as not very social, but the students on the spectrum who are more social are more likely to be STEM majors and be successful. So that really leads to the importance of speech or other communication services, in school, that can be provided, like occupational therapy, speech therapy, things like that, that can really encourage students on the spectrum to be more social and feel comfortable in a variety of social situations. and being able to communicate what their needs are. So I think in the classroom, it can be hard sometimes for them to communicate what they're, about the material and what they need help in. So the race gap. Students who are white were 6 times more likely to be STEM majors. The study had some limitations comparing different minorities, but that was the main standout of the study. And I think that again reflects probably a racial gap and also an economic status. I think those areas probably are coming into play when it comes to why white students were so much more likely to be STEM majors. I think also exposure too. I mean, if you're someone in your family is a STEM major, you're more likely to be a STEM major, I would imagine. So those are some things to really consider of making sure that minorities are exposed to STEM early, that the children, know about that and are exposed to advanced math, so they feel comfortable doing that. So in the future, they can become STEM majors. So recommendations for ASD students. Again, the early exposure to math, social skills training, more STEM programs for underprivileged students with ASD, more support for ASD STEM students in college and universities. So I kind of covered those already. Are there any questions? Appears that there are no questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, and I will see you at this time tomorrow at 7 p.m. for The Difference. Thank you so much. Have a great night.